From the Sky News Australia studios, this is The Outsider's Guide.
G'day and welcome to The Outsider's Guide to everything in the known universe. Ever been stuck in one of those awkward dinner parties or neighbourhood barbecues with some lefty bore prattling on and driving you nuts, but you don't have the arguments at your fingertips? Fed up with being lectured to by some smug young student regurgitating all the ABC's favourite talking points? Never fear, now you have the outsiders to guide you through the wilderness of lefty lunacy and woke discourse. So settle back on a magical and politically incorrect journey of discovery with the preceptial Rita Panahi, the mentoring James Morrow, and myself, the didactic Rowan Dean. You can watch us on Sky News and listen to us on all your podcast platforms. So, Rita and James, there you are at the Barbie and some loud mouth starts banging on about climate change. How do you steer the conversation, Rita?
Well, I think you bring to it inconvenient facts. So just be armed with a couple of things that are not in dispute, that are at hand, that you can throw into the conversation that counter the narrative.
Such as?
Well, it depends, because when you're talking climate change, it's such a broad
Yes.
topic. But say if it was the bushfires, you could bring a statistic about previous years and the land mass that was burnt in previous fires, perhaps in the 30s or 40s or 50s, whatever the data is. But it does mean that you have to go to a party essentially with homework done.
James, but isn't the first thing people go, you're a denier, you're a skeptic, if you even question them rabbiting on about climate change?
Well, I mean, so probably the first thing I would do, Rowan, is not accept any barbecue invitations to Barbies around, say, the Point Piper area, particularly in a sort of big red Italianate mansion down on the water. The second thing you might consider doing is, making sure that if it's your barbecue, you have a good mix of guests. So if Craig Kelly is in town, I would definitely have him over so that, all of that research that Rita's talking about is done. But then, the thing is, this is the awkward thing, because always in these social sort of circumstances, there's always these lefties who want to have a poke at you. They know in your friend group or whatever, you're the righty, you're the conservative, they think, I'm going to have a crack. And so, for me, I just generally find that the nuclear option is the best option and say, so mate, you support nuclear, huh? If you're really all about that, and that's generally the best way to turn them around.
But I find also, again, I'm generalising a tad here, but you find that people who do lean conservative or centre-right can go to a dinner party and have rational civil discussions about a whole broad range of topics without getting fixated on politics, which is what a lot of lefties seem to go to dinner parties just to practice their arguments. And to me, that's not fun.
But I find the key thing about climate change, and you mentioned, Rita, it's a huge topic, and I think you're right, you have to break it down and you have to come in with facts. But the key thing, the danger with the term climate change, it is used to cover all these different issues. So I always try and say, well, listen, exactly what do you mean by climate change? Are you talking about anthropogenic global warming, for instance, for which there is still no evidence? Are you talking about renewable energy, for which is a different argument? Are you talking about if we sucked all the carbon out of... What are you talking about when you discuss climate change? Or more importantly, when you say you believe in it? What exactly do you believe in? That puts them on the spot, James.
Well, that certainly does. But what you were saying before, though, is absolutely the key thing you have to remember going into any of these things. To the left, to us, the left is wrong. To them, we're evil. That transcends the whole argument. So, there's been study after study which shows that left-wingers are far more likely to not want to be friends with right-wingers, to unfriend people on social media if they hear the wrong things. They are definitely far less likely to date outside their political persuasion.
Thank God.
So, yeah, well, for the single folks out there, all the single ladies, you don't have to worry about some woke guy with a wispy little beard and a man bun, cracking on to you. But yeah, I think what you say there is absolutely right.
But Rita, they always say, but don't you believe in climate change, Rita? How do you respond to that don't you believe question?
Oh, I think that's just such a vacuous question, because of course you believe in climate change. The climate has changed throughout the centuries, throughout the millenniums. We know that. I mean, there's evidence for that. We know about ice ages and global warming and mass extinctions, real mass extinctions, not the imaginary one that they seem to think that we're having right now. And I think if they want to get, again, obsessed about this topic and trying to have a gotcha moment, go in there with some facts, go in with some of the predictions that they came out with 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and they sound so ridiculous now. Australian capital cities would run out of drinking water.
No snow,
there would be no
kids would
ski
never see
season.
snow again.
The polar bear population would be decimated. You know, all this scaremongering that was supposed to be rooted in hard science that wasn't. So I think that you've got to be bold. If you want to engage here, you can't try to appease ideological crazies. You've got to be bold, and that would be my advice. Have fun and be bold.
And the other thing, James, is ultimately we know from elections that it's the hip pocket that counts most.
Yeah.
So it's easy to turn the argument round and say, well, okay, well, how much would you be prepared to pay out of your personal life? What would you be prepared to sacrifice? The television, the car, the holiday to wherever? Would you be prepared to sacrifice it? And they always say, James, they always say, oh, no, it's not individual actions that matter. It's the collective action. Well, no, it's not. It's individual actions.
Well,
that
of
matter.
course, because that's exactly the argument that they mount every time you come out at them with the hard fact that Australia emits 1.3% of global emissions and that China has got a program of building coal plants of dozens, if not hundreds, over the next 50 years. So anything we do here is going to be dwarfed by China. There's nothing you can do. And they say, oh, no. It's not about that. Don't give us those hate facts. They say, it is about us. It's about us being part of a global collective, and so even us going to 50% off of that, even though one tiny country, everybody's going to listen to us, and because it's our individual action. But then, as you say, when it turns around to, you had a nice family holiday to, Fiji or Europe or whatever. How much did you do to offset those emissions? And it's like, it's just crickets.
Oh, you look at their lifestyle, not just the travel, but they all have a phone in their hand.
Of
the
course.
components of putting that phone together, how much mining work needs to happen for an iPhone to be...
rare earths in China are disgraceful, the emissions. But Rita, it always boils down to what James touched on, which is this idea of, we've got to do something. If we don't do something, no one else will do anything. When does this ever worked in anywhere in the world has a tiny little country like Australia doing something led to the rest of the world following? Can you think of one example?
And if you're going to be doing something, why don't we do something to lift people out of poverty today? Which is what Adani is going to help do. It's not just going to be jobs for well-paid Australians. That coal is going to India, people who do not have the energy security that we have, who have, they have to just have these primitive methods to heat or to have any sort of electricity supply. So if they want to have a moral argument, then have a moral argument. And if you want to stop coal mining, if you want to stop the entire coal industry, the devastating impact that would have not only on developed nations and our lifestyles, but on those who are a lot worse off, who've been deprived of what we've had advantage of.
But Rita, they don't care about that because, for a large number of the true climate change believers, and especially the ones who really want to argue the point with you in social circumstances, they live in a post-material concerns world. They've got money, they've got theirs, I'm all right, Jack. And they're perfectly happy to see other people not do as well, whether it's in the developing world or right here in Australia. They think that middle-class people or working-class people who spend a lot of money on power and their electronics and internal combustion engines and toys and boats and whatever, they just see that as bogan and gauche, and why should people be allowed to have all of that stuff? For them, you got to understand the climate stuff isn't really so much about the planet. It's like a new sumptuaries law that says we are the class that's allowed to have nice things, and everybody else know your place.
Now we saw in the election, the Scott Morrison election, basically the majority of people would probably, the majority mainstream quiet Australians, whatever you want to call them, probably think, there may be something to do this, I guess we should do something or other, but not really, as long as it doesn't hit my hip pocket. But Rita, tell me about the danger of these accusations with these kind of Salem's type witch hunting, you know, you're a climate denier, you're a climate skeptic. Have you run into that sort of thing as your members of your family?
Not to my face, because I quite often find with these leftist bullies and mobs, they're cowards when they're face to face. They're very brave behind a keyboard, or if they think, you know, there's a group setting against one, but face to face, one on one, they tend to be very well behaved around me. So I can't say.
Can't think why. James,
personally,
should people? How do you respond to that climate denier accusation? Should you laugh at it? Should you ignore it?
But I'm not a climate denier.
Well, that is the badge they will always pin on you, and this is why I say it's so important to break the topic down and think: are you denying, you know, that the planet is heating up? Are you denying that renewables work? Are you denying that energy prices are too high? They use it to cover a multitude of sins, and it's to deplatform you. It's to stop you speaking. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. And so you've got to, as you say, turn it around and say, well, what do you mean by that? What am I supposed to be denying? And what are you denying? Are you denying what we can do in Australia? Are you denying the impact of your flight to Fiji? Are you denying the impact of your car or your smartphone or anything like that? Why aren't you acting? Are you a denier? You got to go aggressive. If people are really aggressive, you have to go on the front foot.
And you know what? They will always fall into the mistake of spouting absolute nonsense that you can debunk then and there. If they bring up the 97% of scientists argument, you know you've got them, because the facts just don't bear out. And
those facts are?
Well, it was never 97%, even though Obama said it. It was, and what they claimed those 97% said wasn't what they actually said.
It was a rigged survey of which there were 3,000 people selected, of which they then chose, I think it was 80 or something like that, and said, okay, of those 80, 90, I mean, it was the most rigged, ridiculous thing. You're absolutely right. What do you see as the future for this, Rita? How long is this madness going? I stupidly predicted in 2017, I said, this is it, it's all over, it's got to be ridiculous now, no one believes it anymore. Of course I was wrong then. How long do you see this climate change scare continuing?
Oh, it's been happening in my lifetime since the 70s. There were front pages of was it Time magazine about, we've got 10 years. There was 1980s. It's not new. I think it's obviously gathered a lot more speed, and it's become far more prominent and mainstream, but I don't think it's going away.
I don't think so either. I think that what happened was that after the Cold War ended, and all the same people who said, you know, Ronald Reagan was going to get everybody nuked, and there was going to be, you know, this whole Soviet-American conflagration, they all the Greens that were all, you know, against that, then found environmentalism as their new end-of-the-world cause. And so, you know, until they find something else to worry about, that's what they're going to worry about.
They lost the economic argument, they're now focusing on the climate argument. How dangerous is it that our children appear to be largely, by and large, 97% of our children seem to be buying into this lock, stock and barrel, Rita?
Well, they've got no choice. It is just drilled into them. And I'm not talking about in science classes. Sustainability and environmental themes are across the curriculum. In English, in maths, it's utterly
it's everywhere. So, and that was the Outsider's Guide to Climate Change.